John Lyons there. Washington's threat to take over Greenland continues to cast a shadow over Europe's relationship with the United States. The US, Denmark and Greenland met earlier this week, hoping to ease tensions, but no significant compromise has been reached. Deutsche Welle correspondent Arthur Sullivan joins us now from Berlin. Arthur, hi there. Do you think the meeting has at all helped cool things down in any way?
Well, the short answer is no. I mean, this meeting came after more than a week of, as you said, heightened tensions amid this ongoing rhetoric from US President Donald Trump about what he intends to do with Greenland. And the key really to that being dialed back would be him dialing back his own rhetoric. But if anything, he's stepping it up. And as a result, the crisis there seems to be deepening. So the meeting was between the Danish and Greenlandic foreign ministers, and that took place with US Vice President J.D. Vance and the Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Now, to get an indication of how the meeting went, afterwards the Danish side spoke of a, quote, fundamental disagreement, saying that Trump's talk of conquering Greenland was totally unacceptable. And I think the Danish Prime Minister probably put things best when she said afterwards that the ambition by America to take over Greenland is intact. Now, the good news is that it was the first formal meeting between these sides since Trump first raised the idea of, at the time, buying Greenland. That was back in 2019. And they did agree to set up a working group to discuss the future of Greenland. And the first meeting of that group is expected to take place soon. But Denmark and Greenland did emphasise after this meeting that they have clear red lines about this. And they spoke repeatedly about the fact that the US position and their position is currently irreconcilable. So in that context, it's hard to see how fruitful or productive this working group would be if the US doesn't step back a little from its current rhetoric.
Arthur, the US threats seem to strike really right at the heart of the NATO alliance. How then is NATO itself responding?
Yeah, that's been at the centre of this. Trump keeps referring to the fact that, in his view, Denmark is not capable of defending Greenland, and that's in the context of, again, in his view, heightened security risks in the Arctic region due to growing rivalry with China and Russia. Now, NATO's European members have been really trying to counter that perception, and in the last week, so they've stepped up talk of Arctic security, and just yesterday, Denmark and several other NATO allies, including Germany, France, the UK, Finland, Norway, Sweden and others, they've all committed to send modest troop numbers, and I emphasise that they are modest numbers. We're talking about 15 down to as low as 1 in some cases, troop numbers and equipment to Greenland to help boost the security situation there. France has already sent troops, I think around 15 in total. President Emmanuel Macron also called an emergency defence meeting yesterday to discuss the threats to supposedly annex the territory of Greenland. And Denmark itself issued a statement saying that it would increase the military presence in Greenland significantly, more aircraft, more vessels, more soldiers. And the country's defence minister has spoken of a more permanent NATO presence. Now, interestingly, NATO itself, so the actual leadership of NATO, has not been speaking. They've kept very quiet about all this. They haven't released a statement backing Greenland. They haven't spoken about the threats to annex the territory. And that's more than likely due to the fact that the US is NATO's main and most important member, and NATO clearly wants to try and keep Trump and the US on side as much as it can. So that's the current state of play from NATO and its actual members.
Arthur, I wonder, though, what it says about the state of the EU-US relationship and where it's potentially headed.
Well, I mean, we do live in an era where these things can be obviously quickly exaggerated. There can be a lot of hyperbole. And obviously Trump first talked about this way back in 2019 and hasn't actually done anything about it. So on one level, you could play it down. But I think at the moment this is taken very, very seriously in European capitals and in European governments, and has really had an impact on US-European relations. I think probably because of what happened in Venezuela, that suggested that Trump was perhaps serious about some of these threats when it comes to foreign intervention. And the fact that he's now repeatedly threatening again to potentially invade and use military force on European territory, part of NATO territory, despite the people of Greenland and Denmark making it consistently clear that they're totally opposed to this. Most European leaders are appalled by that. I mean, even the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, who does enjoy a strong relationship with Trump, she has publicly said she disagrees with him. I mean, for years, European leaders have been grappling with the fact that Trump's position, his policies, sort of fatally undermine the transatlantic alliance. But largely it has held. But what European leaders do agree on is that if the US were to follow through on its threats regarding Greenland, it would be an irredeemable, and probably, it would be a point at which that alliance could not be rebuilt, or certainly it would be very, very hard to rebuild if they followed through with that. Germany's Vice Chancellor said this week that the transatlantic alliance was disintegrating. So that's how serious things have gotten here. And as I said at the start, if the rhetoric is not dialed back, it's hard to see a way forward from this at the moment.
Arthur Sullivan at Deutsche Welle, thank you. Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, has presented her Nobel Peace Prize medal to Donald Trump, a gesture he accepted. The two have met behind closed doors in Washington, where Ms. Machado hoped to foster a stronger connection with the